again to the CHGO Sky podcast, as always hosted by CHGO Sports, the most dangerous podcast in Chicago. I am your host, Chris Penn, and along with your host, the mainest man, your favorite slot receiver, Stephen Pridgeon Garner. Man, time to take a deep breath and inhale because the season has come to a close for the Chicago Sky after a couple of difficult losses to the Las Vegas Aces in the first round of the playoffs. So I guess we got to start there, man. You know, we talk about the quantitative stuff all season long, the stats, the points, rebounds, assists, rotations, who's in, who's out. Also, the show is presented by DraftKings. Use the code CHGO at DraftKings and get $20 added to your account for your first bet. Apologize. But let's be qualitative for a second. How do you feel at the end of the season?
I feel like this team reached this potential. And I think when you look at everything in terms of an all-encompassing way, injuries, head coaching change, new coach, different philosophies he wants to do, but not having enough time to implement it all. Players having 2, 3, 4 game injuries like Atlanta and Morgan, in addition to what we already spoke on with Izzy and Rebecca. The meshing of pieces, obviously Dana and Kai, but also the new pieces, Marina and Courtney, guards that are not necessarily ball dominant, but like the ball in their hands more than what they do with it off of it. That's a lot. Elizabeth Williams, a brand new anchor to a team. 4/5 of your starting lineup were brand new. Add to that a new head coach, brand new rotation pieces off the bench outside of Dana and Ruthie. That's a lot. And to right the ship after having multiple highs and multiple lows and everything mixed in between there, to get a first round berth for your fifth time consecutively as a franchise in a season where it seemed like it wouldn't happen. You know, you take what you get. Like I mentioned in the last 2 pods, you just want to punch your ticket to the dance. This team was definitely playoff caliber, and you can check that box off. And you took what came with that, but they got there. Obviously, there's no I don't know what the verbiage I'm looking for, but there's no moral victories. Yeah. Obviously, you're not just okay with losing in the first round and not winning a game and not really, really competing for the totality of 40 minutes in either of those games. But the fact that you got there with all the adversities you had to go against, come on, man. Then you got to talk about what they transitioned from last season to this season. The team overachieved. And for everybody, especially on Twitter, that had their downs and their lows about the team going into the season, they can't do this, they won't do that, they should tank, all of that stuff, they're not that good, whatever. See where they finished at. Like, how many teams are really going to put up a fight against the Aces? And mind you, a team that's not healthy on top of that, like, with a new coach, like, come on, man.
No, it's true. It's very true. I was looking back at the preseason predictions, and aside from a couple of other interesting ones, the Mystics finishing third was the preseason prediction on WNBA.com. Mm-hmm. The Sky were predicted to finish 10th in the league prior to the season, and as we all know, they made it up to 8th. You see that we've got our producer Kevin in with us today.
What's up, guys?
What's going on, man?
Glad to be on.
Had this excellent graphic for us, just showing you the rankings for the season. And honestly, it's about where you'd expect for a fringe playoff team. I think the most telling things are really interesting, honestly, that the Sky were able to make the playoffs is that opponent field goal percentage. They were second to last in the league in opponent field goal percentage. They did hold teams well, to hold it down well shooting from the three. And even though they're in the James Wade era, they never got a lot of free throw attempts. They didn't give up that many either, and they didn't give up that many personal fouls. So you see a team that obviously, the numbers don't tell what we just talked about. But this is a team that was able to get a lot of things done offensively when it didn't really seem like they should or could be able to. And then going back to that qualitative analysis of the season, I mean, you go from the start of the season. You go from January. Candace Parker's not coming back. Oh, Courtney Vandersloot, she tested the waters last year. She might do it again. Oh, she's gone. all right, we got to re-sign Desiree Stevens. Well, she's going to L.A. Allie Quigley, she's going to sit the season out. So then you're like, where are you at then? And then, like you said, people were talking about tanking, going into the lottery for a draft pick this year and next year. You know, who can we get? Can we get Caitlin Clark? Oh, you know, Angel Reese looks really good. I mean, the tournament, all of those things going on in March. Everybody got to look at Angel, Flaugier Johnson, Caitlin Clark, even Megan Sinano, all of these names that were coming up, Cameron Brink, Elizabeth Kitley, and everybody's thinking about that. And then all of a sudden, James Wade swings the deal for Marina Mabry. And we could probably talk for 20 minutes on the cumulative feelings about the preseason machinations that put this team together. Then Izzy gets injured. Then Rebecca gets injured. Right after you start the season 5-3, 3-1 to start the season. And it's so hard to put into words all of the feelings that I had each week about this team. Never mind the days that we were covering. Never mind the months that we had to analyze. But I think that what I said before the season that they needed to do, which was important, which was hold the fans' interest, they did that. They kept the core fan base interested. They kept them rooting for the team. They kept them involved. And they made moves off the court that ensured that they would increase that involvement, increase that fan engagement in the future. They brought in new ownership. They brought in Dwayne Wade, which I honestly thought was maybe a couple of years away when it was rumored last year. They brought in Laura Ricketts, which was talked about last year, amongst a host of other women investors in the city and without the city. And then that, the talk about the practice space is growing. They talk about separate facilities for the team is growing. And that's going to be a primary focus in the offseason. And we had the exit interviews today, which I know you've been following all morning long. Ka said right off the bat that head coach and GM position is going to be split next year.
Yeah, that's a lot to just kind of process in terms of, obviously, if you're directly involved in it as a player under contract, so many moving pieces going on around you, whether that be on the roster, or if that's obviously in the front office. So many moving pieces, so much uncertainty. But I think Kalia spoke to it today. I can't remember who it was that asked the question. I wish I could attribute them directly, but Kyle basically mentioned with looking at Jewel Lloyd signing her extension, with Kayla McBride signing hers, like there's a lot of other players that were signing their extensions. Mm-hmm. And she mentioned that it really didn't play a factor in why she signed ultimately. She said she felt like she was where she needed to be as far as with the franchise. And obviously she said she consulted with players around the league about different cities and, of course, just, checking off boxes in terms of just knowing what's going on around you, just so that you can make the most astute decision that you can for yourself. And that's pretty much what she said she did. She feels like she's where she's supposed to be. She said there's a lot of work to be done in terms of getting the franchise back to the contending status that we've known them to be over the 2 of the last 3 seasons. But she said there's work to be done, but there's quite literally plenty of opportunities to get that. And I think the first thing first is a good bit of health, because, I mean, the Aces, how many games did they lose to their top players this season?
They had that graphic up, and I was so mad. What was it? Alicia Clark was out for 1 game. Yeah. I think Kelsey Plum was out for 1 game. And that was it.
Correct. So your top 6 players missed a total of 2 games. Like, that makes – like, you can talk about all of the historic stuff, but there's a lot of luck and health in all sports. And when it's not on your side, regardless of how your roster is constructed and all other stuff that might be going on, if the health is not on your side for a season, then it's just going to be an uphill climb. Because it's going to get in the way of a lot of the stuff that you want to do. You want to build continuity, but if you're missing 2 of your top 6 players, that's going to make everything tougher. And just, there's just a lot going on with this team this season. So, again, to kind of bring it full circle back to where I was in the beginning, for them to even make the playoffs was a feat in and of itself. And then to, like I said, obviously they didn't contend for the entirety of 40 minutes in both games, but just to be there and to be taking a step in this new rendition was extremely important to the process.
No doubt. I mean, that 6-3 record, 6-2 over the last 8 games just to make the playoffs. Yep. And you see it right here. The team started out promisingly, but there was going to be the swoon that came. That six-game losing streak, lost 10 of 13 in that stretch, lost Izzy and Bex to injuries, and the only All-Star was Kalia Copper. But to close the season out, the way that they did, especially that key win. I mean, key is underselling it. The most necessary win of the entire season at Los Angeles, and the way that they were able to pull that win off. We're going to go over the most, favorite moments from the season later in the show, but that last possession against LA, that I think was one of the touchstone moments for this team. The way that, even though they didn't necessarily have everything going together in terms of finishing games out, we talked about fourth quarter struggles all season long, but when they needed to at the end of the game, Elizabeth Williams picked up the slack, Ka picked up the slack, Dana picked up the slack, even Courtney got out on defense. Everybody was moving, rotating, because they knew this was pretty much the season, and they won that game. They earned that game. On the road, in a hostile environment, they took that game that they needed.
Everybody's friend Kurt Miller.
Oh, yeah.
Got him out of there too.
They raised the banner. They raised the banner on Kurt Miller again.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
It was so much that was I hate to be lost for words, but I think talking about seasons, even some of the things that I took notes on in preparation for the show about how we could really put this season in perspective don't quite make sense, because a successful season technically for any team in any sport is winning a championship. That's the ultimate goal, right? You want to win a championship. In some leagues, you can get multiple trophies in, say, soccer or cricket or something like that. Even the Olympics, right? You can win one medal, you can win 5. But ultimately, you want to have something that says you were the best that year. But realistically, for this team, after the 6th game, the championship was not going to be within their grasp. So it was, how do you keep things going for the future? And that's the same question that a team like Indiana's looking at. How are you building for the future? How are you cementing yourself in this market? And that was the thing for the Sky. Could they make the playoffs? Could they set themselves up for success next year and the next year and the next year? And they put the building block. They really put their foot down and said, we are not selling out for one season, and then we're going to be, another afterthought on the sports pages or on radio in the minds of Chicagoans. They said, we're here. And that's what I'm really hanging my hat on. I'm honestly proud of that. I've seen a lot of teams recently pretty much say, we don't necessarily care about that. And the Sky said, nah, we're focused.
And I mean, that's how the franchise should be looked at. You look at the landscape of Chicago sports right now, there's a lot of mediocrity and inconsistency from season to season. What's the one team that's been consistent in terms of postseason appearances and successes in that? Mm-hmm. Chicago Sky.
9 of the last 11 years they made the playoffs.
And if you want to zoom in even more, look at all of the adversity they had this season. How many other Chicago teams could take 2 jabs to the stomach with injuries to your top 6 players, lose the head coach and general manager, like literally both in one, seemingly at a last minute's notice, right the ship, do just enough to get to the playoffs, make another appearance? Like there has to be, in a city that struggles with getting those postseason appearances, that's obviously in love with their sports teams, for any franchise to get that many postseason appearances, to be the most recent champion, to overcome everything they did this season. Granted, they didn't obviously have the winning total-wise regular season or in the playoffs that you typically expect from them, but they made it there. Like they're 5 strides ahead of every other Chicago team right now, because there's no rebuilding going on as far as tanking and all of that stuff. And there's a bar. Their bar in consistency is so much higher than everybody else's right now. And it's really no comparison. There's really no comparison at this point. And as they go into this new rendition, there's going to be more to prove to keep that bar, to keep up with it. But, I mean, they fulfilled it yet again. They made it to the playoffs. They punched that ticket.
We got to talk about the playoffs itself. I know it could really be a one-sentence review of this Aces series because what do you say about a team that never trailed for the first time ever in a WNBA playoff series? It's 26 years of WNBA playoff basketball, and the Aces were the first team that never trailed in a series. At the same time, the Sky, I think, there were times where I was looking, I was like, okay, it seems like they're out of it. But that fourth quarter yesterday, and we're going to talk about the whole series, but that fourth quarter yesterday, I didn't expect. That came out of almost nowhere for me. And then all of a sudden, you look up and it's a single-digit deficit. Dana Evans in there, getting to the basket, getting to the lane, Cobb putting down threes, Marina involved in the offense. And even in the first game, too, when they never really cut it closer than 20 at any point, it never felt like the team quit coming. They were just overwhelmed by a more talented opponent. But what did you see on your side? I know we're talking about qualitative, quantitative, what have you, but what are the things that really stuck out to you in these two games?
Well, the first thing that jumps off the screen is that the Aces are who we think they are. I mean, you can't start anywhere else without mentioning that. That team is special. They're the reigning champions for a reason. They have aspirations for doubling up for a reason. And, I mean, they are, at this point, the golden standard of the W for a reason. Asia Wilson is, however you want to slice it, either the 1A or 1B best player in the league. There's no number 2. She's either 1A or 1B.
Yeah.
And yesterday, she was 1A. And 1A because of everything she does. But just kind of looking at it from the Sky perspective, the Aces, they put you in so many compromising situations as a team on offense and defense just because they're so cohesive. That's something that the Sky are trying to get back to in terms of having that cohesion. That's a weapon that you can put on other teams. And schematically, just kind of looking at, they just really had the Sky just kind of guessing a lot. There was a lot of, on offense, for example, catching holds in offense. They're trying to run sets. They're switching. Their rotations defensively are quicker than you can move the ball at times. And that can really bog down your offense in addition to them actually switching. So that's flattening out all your actions. That just makes life tough. And then defensively, their ball movement is so on time and on schedule that if your defensive rotations aren't early, like you can't even just be on time with them. You have to be early. If you're not, we're going to see what we saw with Kelsey Plum coming off the screen. She kicks it to Chelsea. Chelsea hits the roller because they put 2 to the ball and they switched. And now before your low man can rotate from the other side, they just got the ball in the middle of the paint for a layup or an and one. And it's just another level. There's another level. And the Sky have shown that they can play at that level. But again, it's about, can you do it, A, when you need it most, and B, can you do it for 40 minutes? And those were two things they did not have them all season, but they didn't have it consistently enough. And we saw a lot of their inconsistencies and their weaknesses show up in the series. So just kind of looking at it at face value, that's really what kind of stood out to me.
I completely agree with that. It was mystifying watching the Aces defensively, offensively, the way they moved the ball, the way they anticipated where the ball was going, even on fast breaks, like fast break opportunities. Mm-hmm. You expect to see teams running back in transition, especially with a team like the Sky, Courtney Williams, Kalia Copper. They can get up and down the floor so quickly. But no, here's Jackie Young jumping a pass. Here's Kelsey Plum hanging back. There were a few hit-aheads where they were just anticipating where the ball was going and moving to it and either knocking the ball out of bounds or getting steals. Alicia Clark was there, which we know Alicia Clark's a good defensive player, but they have a mentality of just they want to keep you on the defensive end of the floor. It feels like a football team, a gridiron football team that just wants to keep you on your side of the field. They're not going to let you move the ball past midfield. And on defensively, they're going to stick you in the red zone for most of the game. That's what the Aces do. They just keep pressing. And I think that was like just magnified in Asia Wilson. She had a somewhat subpar game on Friday, if you could call it that, and then everybody else was firing. And she was doing what she needed to do. She was drawing defenders and cleaning the glass. Sunday, I need you to go and watch old clips of Moses Malone and then watch clips of Asia Wilson, because I put in a tweet on Sunday afternoon, and I don't think that it really comes across, but what we see Asia do is not rebound in the same sense as we've seen from Sylvia Fowles or Tina Charles or any of the great rebounders that you can think of from the last 10 or 15 years of WNBA basketball. She had a moment within, I think, between three players where a ball came off of a jump shot. Ruthie was there, Courtney Williams was there, and I think Alana was there. And Asia not only got up and tipped the ball to herself, she put the ball back up, missed it, put it back up again, got fouled, and put it in. Mm-hmm. You get tired of that. If you're playing against a person like that, you get tired of it. Not to mention what she can do on defense, how she alters shots, how she chases the ball down, how she ensures that there's one possession. But to be able to work the offensive glass in the same way and then still be able to take the ball off the dribble and when the need arises, pull up from the free throw line for a jump shot and hit the majority of your foul shots, like the man said, there's no number one and number two when you talk about Asia Wilson. There is 1A, 1B, possibly 1C. And if you really feel like it, she could be 0. She is the top here, and then everybody else is kind of down here. Because the performance that she put on Sunday, if MVP voting is still going on, I think that might have won it. If Connecticut had won their game in the same way as they won game 1, maybe you still have an argument. And Breanna Stewart's still out there for New York, but the way that they play and how Sabrina's come on, I think Asia's got it. I think she won. I think she went back to back.
And just kind of just looking at Asia again, man, I felt like coming into the series, the not necessarily advantage, but one way that the Sky could dictate was by winning at doing all of the extra little things. I talked about all season Atlanta being the first to the floor, regardless of who her opponent was, whenever there was a loose ball. I talked about Atlanta's rim running. I talked about her offensive rebounding. Elizabeth Williams talked about her defensive activity, prowess on the glass, boxing out, rim running, getting on the floor for loose balls. I mean, Asia took that dynamic of the game and she not just won it, but dominated it. And it's like when you start looking on the margins for, okay, they're not going to just outscore this team outright. So you have to start chipping away at little things. You got to win the extra possessions. You got to not concede extra possessions. Lose balls, you got to get every last one of them. All the little things like that over the course of a game that I felt like the Sky could dictate with and just kind of chip away at giving themselves a chance. They were able to do those things in that non-Asia minutes, but when Asia was on the floor, she was literally the player with the motor, the player with the most skill, the player that was dominating the most, the player with arguably the most usage. She was just doing literally everything. She was being an MVP. So, at some point you just got to kind of tip your cap to a player like that because she was literally doing everything. And, you just take it to the chin and go back to the drawing board going in the next season. But what I will say, we talked a lot about the aces. Kalia Copper and Dana Evans.
Yes, sir.
Those two players, I'm not surprised that they had that fourth quarter that they did. I felt like at some point, because of the mindset of those two, we talked about dogs early in the season, our first podcast. Those are maybe the two biggest dogs on the team in terms of how they go about showing it, imposing their will on their opponents on the defensive end, and obviously including the offensive end. If you're a dog, it's going to show up on both sides of the floor because you're just a competitor. And those two showed it. Obviously, I'm not going to say it was to no avail, but they ultimately came up short yesterday because they were kind of outpowered in terms of roster for roster. And, again, we could talk about injuries and all of that. But just seeing what those two did, getting to the basket at will, paint touch after paint touch, knocking down three-point shots, getting the assists up, playing in transition, playing with the pace that they needed. Those two players, again, just special, man, special. And what they brought in that fourth quarter is what flipped the game on its head in moments. Again, those were in the non-Asia minutes. And they were able to find a way to, I think they got it to 9.
Yep.
They got it to around 9 points. So, yeah, just looking at how they were able to say, okay, here we got one last push. We just putting pedal to the metal. Kai's going to the basket. Dana's going to the basket. They got the aces. They got Becky calling a timeout. less than a minute and a half into the fourth quarter because she sees what's going on and she doesn't want to bring Asia in too quick. And then they come out of the timeout and it's getting the same thing, and then Asia ends up coming back in a little bit earlier than normal within the rotation just to kind of put a muzzle on everything. And it fizzled out a little bit, but just to see that from two players that have lingered from the franchise, from the championship rendition of the team. So now they're both in bigger roles than they were in back then. That's where you want to be at going into the next season, season 2 of a new team.
RC watching the show, he said, as an Aces fan in Chicago, I was just happy that we were disposed of the Sky quick and fast, and that's what was at stake at the beginning of that fourth quarter. Like you said, Becky was forced to call a timeout, and they were going into that fourth quarter up 14, I believe. Actually, no, it was 20. It might have been 24. I think it was 24 because they had a basket taken off that Kelsey Plum was ruled to have let go after the shot clock expired. And then, so the Sky start that quarter on a 17-2 run. This is after they lost by 29 on Friday, after they've been down 20-plus most of the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And then you come back and if you make a last swing, if that's your last swing of the night, that was a pretty big haymaker to throw because that building was as quiet as it's been most of the season. I think we talked about the few times the Aces have lost, and they only lost once at home. So people were talking. I had an Aces fan on Spaces Friday who was very excited that they were moving from T-Mobile to Michelob Ultra, their regular home, because of the proximity for the fans to the court, how used to everybody was to the shooting backdrop, all of that. And so you're thinking, as an Aces fan, we're about to close it out. It's going to be an easy win. We're going to move on to the next round. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a 9-point deficit. The Boo Birds didn't come out, but they were like, I think the sphincters tightened just a little bit because knowing what that team what the Sky can do, what they had done, the Sky were the ones that were jumping the passing lanes. They were the ones getting out on fast breaks. They were the ones hitting the open shot. And honestly, if there was anybody on the floor that I wanted, other than Asia or Kia Stokes, to be the one taking a three after that second timeout, it would have been Chelsea Gray. She is just that kind of a player who knocks those shots down, and that really, started to close the door finally. But that 17-2 run is going to something to hang your hat on. Absolutely something you hang your hat on, because as I know we talked about, the morning after a playoff loss, we all know what it feels like. It feels trash. You want to just go back to sleep, but this is really something to go on, as well as Kyrie signing and some of the things that we got in the exit interviews that we're going to talk about just after this break. So we want to let you know about Shady Rays. As always, the sun's out. You see the guns are out, baby. Don't clip that. Don't clip that, please, anybody. But let's take advantage of the last bit of summertime and the early fall as we can. And that's why you need to check Shady Rays. They are the best sunglasses that money can buy, bar none. And do you know of any other sunglass company, any other company that will, if you break a pair, they will give you a new pair free of charge? Because that's what Shady Rays will do. If you lose them, if you break them, if you sit on your glasses, if you throw them at the screen in frustration after watching the Sky lose, talk to Shady Rays, reach out to them, and they'll give you another pair, a new pair, no questions asked. They have a lowest price guarantee. And still, we've got this deal all summer long, and we're still bringing it to you. If you use that code CHGO, get 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses. Do you know another sunglass company that is helping out pediatric cancer patients, that is putting up playgrounds for multiple sclerosis patients, that is helping out nonprofits nationwide like Shady Rays is? Because I don't. So ditch those Ray-Bans, baby. It's not 1992 anymore. Use Shady Rays. Go to shadyrays.com and again use that code CHGO for 50% off your first 2 pairs of sunglasses. Shady Rays. Now, again, last week I know we talked about, what was it, moving day at college, and you need a car for that. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to be taking the bus during those winter months and dealing with getting hit you ever gotten hit from a slush from yeah. I was
few times, man. That
I already
sucks.
tell.
All bad.
Standing at the bus stop, just waiting, and all of a sudden somebody comes screaming through and just. That wouldn't happen if you had a car from Ray Chevy in Fox Lake, I'll tell you that. Ray, not only will they give you a great deal on a car, truck, SUV, but the price that you see online, if you go to raychevy.com, is exactly the price that you'll see in the dealership when you go to purchase your car. That is if you're a student. That's if you're a working professional. That's if you are a grad student. That's if you're a farmer. That's if you are an astronaut. Any profession that you can think of, the price you see online is the price that you will get in the dealership. And from now until September 30th, they're offering you a deal, 0% financing. 0% through the end of this month, and that goes through the end of the year. So please check out Ray Chevy in Fox Lake. Shout out to Fox Lake, all my people out in McHenry County. Ray Chevy, find new roads. The exit interviews, man. I know you were working on those today, and we didn't get the chance. You didn't get the chance to hear what Emery Vatansever had to say. Had a bit of a delay on that, but there were some interesting things that we already got from the exit interviews today. Want to shout out our people who are watching the show. RC Talks Basketball, an Aces fan in Chicago. We won't appreciate you watching the show. We won't run you out of town since you're tuning in with us, but. Has some things to say for Marina Mabry. Marina Mabry should have, did more, and she left room for a lot to be desired. Also said she didn't really show up and show out. Disappointing playoffs for her, and Wade gave up a lot for Marina. She is a focal point when you swing a trade that big and you give up draft picks and an ostensible franchise face in Diamond DeShields. For sure, a lot of the focus is going to be on Marina, and I think she owned up to that. Kevin, I know I threw one of a couple Marina quotes in the hopper that Julia Poe from the Trib got from the exit interviews, but basically she was saying that she understood that her performance wasn't as good as it could be. I'll make sure to get those in our Slack channel for you, man. But physicality was something that she talked about, especially the way the teams were defending her and running her through screens. A lot of things that she wasn't quite standing up to that she felt that could have been better, should have been better. What do you think about that? Just how Marina is approaching the offseason already?
Well, first things first, I absolutely love, especially in the social media era of athletes where you have a lot of different opinions and things being said about you on a daily basis. I cherish and value and really appreciate athlete that is 100% transparent and truthful, and that was pretty much what Marina was her entire exit interview. She acknowledged that she left more to be desired on the playoff stage and just in general for the season, not just for other people's expectations, but for her own.
Mm-hmm.
And she owned up to, she didn't say she wasn't in shape, but she said she could have been in better shape. And she also mentioned, like you said, that she wanted to come back stronger. And she felt like a lot of teams, in terms of scouting reports, it kind of caught up with her that they realized, okay, maybe if you get a little bit more physical with her, you can kind of start finding ways to win that matchup. And the better teams that are constructed to do so were able to kind of get under her skin a little bit. And she mentioned that, and it's for a player of Marina's potential to acknowledge that she wasn't at the potential she could have been at for this particular season. That says a lot, because I think before you can talk about anything as far as skill and production and all of that stuff, if you can't be held accountable, and I'm not talking about by your coach, by your captain, by your trainer, by your parents, if you can't hold yourself accountable as an athlete, almost none of that other stuff matters, because you're never going to reach your potential because you're getting it your own way. And for her to be as transparent as she was in her exit interviews, that really spoke volumes to me in terms of her character, in terms of her trajectory, and in terms of whether I feel like she can get there as a member of the Sky or not. And she left me very impressed with the poise and the maturity. She was, like I mentioned, she laid it all out. She basically laid out her whole scouting report. She was like, yeah, we know she can do a lot of these things, but we know that if you do these few things, you can put her in compromising situations. And much respect to her for that. And I'm really looking forward to what she does overseas. I think she said she's going to be in Turkey.
Okay.
And then obviously coming back to the W next year in 2024. And I definitely got more to speak on with her based off of the conversations that we had. But yeah, she left me very impressed today.
How old are you again, man?
28.
Talking about accountability, like this man sounds like he's 50.
Man, listen, when you get put in positions of leadership and things are dependent on you, if that's not your language and your perspective on it, the ship is sinking. so yeah.
That's not a point. That's not just a point guard talking, folks. That's a man. That's a grown man talking. So we got this quote from Marina again. From Julia Poe from the Chicago Tribune. Marina said, I like to think of myself as a skilled player with a really high IQ, but I get tired out there, need to be in better shape. I need to be in better condition. I need to be stronger because the physicality that I saw this season is like something I've never seen before. And that's, I think, a testament to not only how she was utilized in Dallas, but a testament to the contract, like we talked about. She was brought in to be a focal point of this offense. Teams were playing her like she was a focal point of this offense, and they played for that accordingly. And I think it's a testament to Marina that she had that stretch of shooting the three, a few stretches this season where she was pretty much lights out from beyond the arc.
She got the franchise record.
Yeah. And I know there's more games, but she was putting that ball in the basket towards the end of the season and at a really critical time where the Sky needed it, when she just, I think, tailed off a bit going towards the last couple of games and then into the playoffs. But that last line, I think, is indicative of the players that James Wade brought in. So I appreciate all of the players I played against showing me my weaknesses, because I will make that my strength. I think it's going to be really incumbent on Sky fans to do their best to watch those overseas games, whether it's live or whether it's the playback. Because
is your best friend.
Seriously, all of those Eurobasket games are on YouTube. Mm-hmm. They are live on YouTube. So not every Sky player who's going overseas will be in Eurobasket, since it's a competition for the best teams in the respective leagues, like the Champions League in soccer. But you will be able to see a lot of teams, a lot of players, including some of those players that we're going to talk about in the free agency list, on YouTube easily on Eurobasket. And if you can't watch the games, borrow somebody's computer, man. Like, at least check the box scores, because what we saw from Dana Evans this season, that was built with Besiktas last year. What we were starting to see from Rebecca Gardner, that was built with Spar Girona. All of these overseas games in the wintertime are going to be your best friend for increasing your level of knowledge about the game and just being able to analyze the game, because a lot of what is in basketball now in the professional leagues started in Europe too. A lot of the style of the game, taller players stepping out and shooting threes, Spain pick and roll, the go-to in Steven's analysis, the Spain pick and rolls, we see them all the time now. The back screens and the down screens, pin downs, those cuts on the baseline,
post players making plays.
Like all the stuff we saw with Elizabeth Williams short roll, that wasn't in U.S. basketball 20 years ago. So please watch those games. We obviously got Ka said that the head coach and GM positions are going to be split next year, and she said she might not play. She might play overseas. She opted out of it last year, so that'd be interesting for that. I know she won the Eurobasket title a couple seasons back. Really wish we had gotten to see what Emery was going to say, because a lot of people, when I posted, like, what's your offseason desires, a lot of them said coach. We talked about Emery, what he brings to the table, how the team has reacted to him. So I thought it was interesting that a lot of people said that he needed a head coach. Most of them were up on the Teresa Weatherspoon train. But, I mean, without seeing it, has your position changed? Do you think that the Sky should or will go on a coaching search, or will they hand the keys to Emery, sooner rather than later?
Ultimately, I feel like they will go a different direction, but I don't want that to be a slight at Emery, because I genuinely feel like he did as much as you possibly could in the situation that he was. I mean, obviously he had a say-so on whether he wanted to do it or not, but it wasn't literally by choice. It was very much spontaneous. So for him to do what he did, I think he showed a lot. He got a lot out of the players that we might not have necessarily thought he would be able to, just given the constraints of everything. So to see him get this team to the playoffs when all the odds were stacked against them, that just really says who he is. And I think even past all of the numbers and analytics and stuff, just the way that the players respond and speak about him, I think that's what really is at the foundation of everything that he was able to do success-wise towards down the home stretch of the season.
I can't agree more. He said on Friday, and there was a timeout, and it wasn't mic'd up directly into the huddle, but there was an extended stoppage in play, and the Sky were down pretty big early, and he says, like, we have to do it now. I just remember him saying, it's like, we have to do it. There's no time left. And they weren't able to really pull that game back, but like I said, they never stopped going at it. It was really just things that they did not have available to them, whether it was players, whether it was personnel, whether it was specific ways of operating. It wasn't any. I think there were some things that they could have corrected for sure, but that just would have made the final score a little bit closer. Winning the game was not within their purview, but he got them as close as they could to being able to win that game with what he had available to him. I'm interested. I know we talk about Teresa Weatherspoon, but Tanya Edwards has been up in the air all season long as a really defensive-minded coach, and I think defensively the Sky could use some improvements as well. So I'd be interested to see if they give an interview to Tanya Edwards. And I know there's a few more names floating around there, but general manager is really where it's going to come in, because coach is easy to talk about, and a lot of teams have had that head coach general manager over the history of the league. And we're really now just seeing those roles start to split. So I'm interested to see who the general manager ends up being.
Yeah, that's going to be important, because you want for whoever your head coach is ultimately to have some type of synergy and connectedness to whoever it is that general manager. Because the head coach, whoever it is, whether it's Emre or someone else that comes in, is going to have a general idea of the type of players that fit the system that they want to run on both sides of the floor. Mm-hmm. The general manager has to not only be understanding of that, but savvy enough cap-wise to make it work. So you want the right puzzle pieces to fit the picture that the coach is trying to paint. If the GM is not savvy enough or doesn't have enough reach to make that happen, there's going to be a divide. And when you get a divide, that's when you start getting inconsistencies. The better teams, cough, cough, the Mystics, are built the way they are because the head coach and general manager either were the same person or they're on the same page like they are now. And, I mean, you could look at the Aces the same way. You could look at a couple of other teams. They're consistent because there's a connectedness there. And when you're able to find that type of harmony and have the reach within that from both the head coach and the general manager, the head coach basically plants the seed, and the general manager is the one that executes the completion. And if you have those two things working in tandem, that's when you start building a team. You can kind of transition, even expedite the process of getting better in a new rendition. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for, that things can happen quickly and that they can start figuring out how to put the puzzle pieces together next season.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the Sky have a lot of free agents on the books that they are looking at, not outside the organization first, but there's players up that they have to re-sign. Kevin, I know you got that graphic for the Sky free agents before the free agents that are available next year. And I want to be clear about a couple of the terms here. Unrestricted free agent, they can sign with whomever. They don't have to wait for an offer sheet. Ruthie Hubbard is a restricted free agent, which means that she's 5 years service in, and any offer that she gets from any team, the Sky could match. So pretty much a team could say, we're offering you $80,000, $90,000, what have you, and if the Sky decides to match it, then they're good. If they don't, then Ruthie goes to another team. Reserve free agents on the left have less than that 5 years of service time, and they can only listen to offers from their team. So the Sky are the only team that can send them any offers unless they outright release them. So here, obviously, you got some things to think about. Courtney Williams was running that point position for most of the season for the Sky, and Alana Smith, we've talked about so much. But also Rebecca Gardner is due a deal. Morgan Birch had some time in the lineup at the beginning of the year, and then Robin Parks really came on strong at the end of the year. So where do you go with these names, notwithstanding some of the tidbits that we got from the exit interviews?
Well, I think a lot of what we're talking about in terms of the head coach part is going to play a role in the Courtney Williams dynamic. And it's obviously not an indictment or a slight against Courtney because you can just check my timeline on Twitter. You could revisit any podcast. Courtney's been so great this season as a point guard. She's probably been a top 5 point guard in the W this season. And that's saying a lot for a player this is their literal first season in a professional setting on the W side as a point guard.
Yeah. So
to do that, to be top 5, I think, in assists, and to have multiple triple doubles under your belt, and yeah, Courtney is she got a lot of go. She can go. She can go. So this is not an indictment against her, but head coaches are often particular about point guards because that's the person that's going to be the proverbial extension of the head coach. That's the person that is going to be commanding things inside the court, in between the sidelines. The coach only has so much of a reach that they can have. That point guard is going to be the person that's putting people in positions, getting the ball where it needs to be, keeping the team moving in alignment with whatever the system is. And, coaches are particular at times. So maybe they might want to go a different direction at point guard. Maybe whoever the coach is ultimately might be impressed with what Courtney did this season. But I think figuring out what direction whoever the coach is wants to go at point guard is going to be most important. And then building your roster out after that. Obviously, there's other needs that are going to be done, but I just feel like the point guard position is the great equalizer, the trump card even. That's why you see the Liberty go and get all of these pieces, but they also make sure that they go get Courtney Vandersloot. That's why you see the Aces have their ups and downs, but when they go get Chelsea Gray, now they're the gold standard of the W.
Everything's steady after that.
Correct. That's why you see, of course, they had their own injury issues this season, but Kurt Miller go from coast to coast, from Connecticut to Los Angeles. What does he do? Make sure to bring his point guard with him, Jasmine Thomas. Like all of these, like the teams that have inconsistencies on offense or defense that make the playoffs are the teams that usually aren't as settled in at point guard as other teams are. And you can look on the men's side of basketball and see the same thing. There is a direct correlation there. You can't there's multiple initiators of offense in this new era of basketball, but you can never overstate having a point guard. And I think that's going to be important for the team going into the new head coaching era.
I agree with that. I think I hate to put a prediction on it. I don't know if we'll see Courtney Williams back next season just because of what you said. One, they're bringing in a new general manager. They're most likely bringing in. I would be surprised if they don't bring in a new head coach. And so at that point, you're looking for somebody who fits that mold of what those two people want to do. Mm-hmm. And there's some interesting head coaches point guards on the free agent market, which we can bring that one up too. There were a few names that jumped out to me on that list where I was like, oh yeah, I've kind of wanted this person for a while, and it would be cool to bring them in. Natasha Cloud in Washington and Ariel Powers, Ariel Powers was pretty much out of the rotation by the end of the season in Minnesota, which, take it as you will. But I think those players are ideal for somebody who, and Lasia Clarendon, honestly, on this list is my favorite, somebody who can run your offense, make the passes that you need to, and just be steady. Just be a steady veteran presence, another steady veteran presence in your locker room, within your team. But there's, like I said, there's a lot of directions that this guy could go. I think re-signing Alana Smith is the primary focus right now, because you paid $100,000 for her this year, and she performed. She earned that check, and it really feels like the Azare Stevens miss out last year, that the Sky weren't able to retain a front court player who runs the floor well, who plays good defense, who can hit the outside shot and rebound, and they were able to find that with Alana. and I don't think that they should try and go searching for it again. So I think re-signing Alana Smith is up there. It would be nice to retain Robin Parks, just really for so many unsung players off the bench contributed for the Sky this year, but there's going to be some sweepstakes, boy. Skylar Diggins-Smith is not coming back to Phoenix.
No, absolutely not.
Not at all.
And there's definitely plenty more information that's going to be stemming from that situation. The more she gets a concrete a situation set for herself going into next season.
Oh, she's going to be tough.
Even not next season, I want to not jump the gun and say whenever she feels like she's ready to come back to play. Let me phrase it that way. There will be more coming out on that for sure. But
yeah, it's either going to be Roz or Holly Rowe, LaChina. Somebody's going to have a sit-down interview with Skylar, man. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some heat that Matt Ishbia might have to do some damage control for. But I don't see the Sky getting in on the Skylar sweepstakes just because they have those positions kind of set with Marina and Ka. But Brittany Griner would be interesting to see if the Sky take a run at her. A lot of people talked about getting a post player that is more physical. And that Brittany's not necessarily a double-digit rebound type player, but she is just with her height, with her skill set. I think she's a solid passer out of the high or low post. She can get you buckets. And we saw the Aces have trouble with Tierra McCowan this year. So if you get a player of similar height and skill, I think you put pressure on them. And right now, New York are those two top teams that you're chasing.
I feel like Brittany is going to stick around with the Mercury because Diana is going to be staying there as well. And I feel like those are the pillars of the franchise. They have been. They've won how many championships together? Like, they have so much experience together. I just don't see Brittany uprooting herself, and then obviously with everything that she had coming into this season.
That's a good point.
I can't see her changing locations. I actually could see Skylar coming to the Sky.
Wow, really?
And it goes back to head coach preference at point guard specifically. One thing, again, and none of this is in any way an indictment against Courtney Williams. They just go about playing the position differently. And even past that, Skylar is more of a true point than Courtney was being kind of thrusted into that position this season. So with Skylar, she is an elite dribbler, first of all, just handling the ball. She's an elite driver. One thing that the Sky were missing this season, when we talk about the drum roll, please, working against switches, one of the biggest issues was that they don't have multiple players that could get past the initial defender and put the defense in rotation. That was either Dana or it was Kai. Courtney could do it at times. Marina could do it at times, but their cup of tea is more so working with the defense in rotation already. So you put Skylar in that situation. Now she's driving past players. Like, it's just little tweaks like that can help expedite the process and make them better suited against teams that like to switch, which is ultimately something that all of the good teams can do on the playoff stage. That's going to help you. Skylar has that. Skylar is also one of the best point of attack defenders in the WNBA. Should have been all defensive team her last go around, in addition to having like a top 7 MVP season. So you get the scoring with the defense, and then the playmaking is equal to, if not just a little bit more different than the way Courtney goes about it as well. You get those dynamics all into the mix with the Sky and what they have. I think it could be really good. So if they do decide to go a different direction in terms of point guard, I feel like if it's not Skylar, then they should just stick with Courtney, because it's not really that many options that make you really want to just up and change. I can't see Natasha leaving Washington, and that's like another big thing for me. So, just kind of stuck there. But I think there is a chance that Skylar could potentially come to the Sky.
I want to make sure. I think I'd have to go back. But I think that there was Natasha got the ovation in the last regular season game. I don't know if she did the wave to the crowd, but it was one of those moments where it was like, was that it? Was that the farewell? But you got to wait and see. The Skylar one is tough. I would like to see it, because if you could make that work, you have a team that's just going to get in your face from the first whistle to the last one. Her, Marina, Ka, Dana. Elizabeth's going to be quiet, but then she's going to block your shots in next week. I think the problem is navigating the salary cap at that point, because Kyle's got the Supermax and she got one of the richer deals in the signing period, 2 years at a total of $490,000. So the Sky are a little bit they're under the cap right now. They're well under the cap. I think they are still like $500,000, but in terms of re-signing who and for how much, because Rebecca Gardner is on that reserve free agency deal, and I think that's a primary target that they want to re-sign Rebecca Gardner for their offense and their defense. Mm-hmm. Then you're looking at, Skylar's going to command a Supermax. I don't know if she's going to take anything less than that for coming to a team like the Sky. Then you're talking about, how do we navigate, how do we move this money to make it work? So I think they should offer a deal, no doubt. I think when a player of her caliber comes on the market, especially when you're pretty much like, there's no chance that she's going to re-sign with her current team, you take your shot. But I don't know if it works logistically, economically for them. That's the only thing.
And I think that's where your draw from the front office comes into play. So first of all, you nail your head coaching situation. Whoever you're most 10 toes down about, you stamp that as soon as possible. If it's tomorrow you can stamp that, perfect. Now you have that much more time, you feel me? Get into the intricacies of making these decisions. Stamp that, stamp your general manager, and then you can start using the draw of a player like Dwayne Wade from the front office, who doesn't have respect for him that plays the game? Like, forget the fan perspectives and all the rivalries. If you are a player of basketball at any level and you don't even have to really watch, you just know who Dwayne Wade is. His draw is something that I feel like is going to play a role in the roster construction for the Sky moving forward. And I think he even said he's not really sure of what his exact role with the front office is going to be. When he spoke with Holly Rowe, they were still working out the intricacies of that. But just having him there and obviously being locked in with the process of the practice facilities and just bettering the community engagement and things like that, that's all going to help. But his draw for free agents is going to be something that's going to help this team at some point, and I feel like it might just be this upcoming offseason. So, you can get to talking about numbers and all of that, but if you have somebody like Dwayne Wade that's co-signing, bringing a player in, they pitch, you get Kalia Copper dropping any bit of a dime in terms of, hey, I like you, I like to play with you, something like that, that's a lot of draw. I can't see that many players in terms of looking at situations across the W where you can genuinely compete. If you got Dwayne Wade talking to you and then you got Kalia Copper talking to you, who, as far as champions go, how many teams have won a championship the last 2 years besides the Aces and the Sky? Like, that's it. And who's the conference, or who's the championship MVP?
That's a good point.
There's a lot of draw there. So I think that could help them as well in terms of navigating the negotiation waters. But that is very relevant to bring up, though, for sure.
For sure. All right, man, we're coming to the close of the show, but I want to take one moment to really put a bow on the season, and that's looking at your favorite moment from the year. Like, if you just close your eyes and think back, what your favorite moment for the year is for the season that was.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this one just because there's multiple moments that come to mind. Obviously, Dana coming into her own in Dallas, specifically with Odyssey Sims and all of that back and forth. All of that back and forth. Kalia Copper continuing to make teams change the way they defend her, and not just make them change the way they defend her, but having answers to all of those things that they try to pose to her over the course of a game, springboarding that into a career season, yet another career season, in a line of career seasons that she's stacked up at this point about 3 in a row now. Courtney Williams coming into her own as a point guard and everything that comes with that. And she talked about managing personalities as a leader in the team with the ball in her hands all the time as being not a struggle, but something that she had to a challenge she had to come stand up to. And she felt like she did a great job in that, and I agree. Elizabeth Williams playing more minutes than she has at any point in her career this season. Career highs in steal totals, block totals, almost in points. Like, what can you say about her? Atlanta, like, you could just run down a long list of things. But if I had to nail just one thing, I would say that stretch of games where they had the win streak where they beat Dallas twice. Because I felt like that was the peak of the team, and I felt like it came at the right time. And then they had that 5 days off until their next game, and that high in terms of momentum that they were riding on, and that peak of play where the offense was playing off of the defense, and then the defense was playing off of the offense. The Dana dynamic, the Kai dynamic, Marina, Courtney, Elizabeth, Atlanta, everything was clicking the way that it possibly could at its peak with the players that aren't in the rotation there. I would go with that, man, because that was just special. And it really seemed like they were turning the corner. I think at that point they were like 6th. So they were still very well in the thick of things.
Right.
You know? So I think that was it. And then Emre, his stamp on the team was really starting to show itself too. The way they ran their offense, the multiple schemes defensively. They brought in the zone on 2-3 the 2-3 zone, and that was really what won them the weekend. In addition to just the other things that they were doing, it was just fun. That was a good space for them.
We had, according to Char, longtime Sky fan, has had that exact moment. Actually, sorry, that was Ike, our man Ike, who is a producer. Man, if y'all don't check out Ike, you guys on Twitter, getting to produce your new single, all of you aspiring lyricists out there, immediately put up that photo from the game in Dallas with Dana and that stare down with Odyssey Sims, Battle of the Headbands right there. Dana 5'6" of fury, man. And that was definitely a good moment, especially for a Sunday afternoon game. That was dope. Shar actually had what I had forgotten about, that game against Indiana that Atlanta hit the buzzer beater layup to tie and force overtime. And the Sky won that one. That was good.
That was one hell of an ATO by James.
That was fantastic. Yes, that dribble handoff. And then Marina coming in and making a good pass down low and
Atlanta
sealing off that side. And it was still a tough layup. Still a tough layup. She had to get it off in time, and she was going right-handed underneath the basket. So that was a really, really good play.
And it's just on that moment, we talked about switching. Indiana switched on that, and they did something they didn't do consistently enough this season. Atlanta slipped the screen, and she was wide open. That's a microcosm for you.
It's true. It's true. I would say my favorite one was the second half against New York in New York, where Cobb went nuclear, put up 19 points in the second half, 4 threes, and the Sky came back to beat the Liberty after losing a game on Friday, which I was like, there's no way they're losing this game. And that was probably my favorite moment of the season. So it's still up. We still got that tweet up on the CHGO Twitter handle. Let us know what your favorite moment of the season was. Want to thank everybody who's come in with us. Kevin producing for us today. Our man Lawrence, Super Sarah, who is not with us. Sorry, that sounded a little grim. She's just not on the show today. She's just not here.
She was
here last week. That's just to clarify. She was here last week.
My bad, y'all. And all the guests that we brought in this year. Nikias Duncan came in with us. Grant Dorsey came with us. Katie Duffy. The man Mike Hughes. Check out Mike's show on YouTube every single day. This man is putting up quality content and giving you information that you can only get from a guy who has the in with players around the league. And we had so many. Shimmy Gray Miller from last week who came in with Steven on an amazing show. If you haven't checked it out, check that out too. Shimmy had a lot of thoughts about the head coaching search over the offseason too. So we want to thank everybody who's come in with us. Of course. Jason doing his thing now in Detroit back home. Man, it's been a long year. Any final words? We're not done for the season. We're going to be back. There's still WNBA basketball to be played, but any final words on the Sky, man?
I would say for fans that just, especially after how reactionary things were last season, there's more decisions and things to be made for this upcoming offseason. So my word for the offseason is patience. Please, they've earned patience from the fan base. We love a fan base that's very, very much in tune with all the things that are going on with the franchise. Just be patient. Allow for them to run their decision-making course with every decision they're making in terms of these positions. And the team is going to be in the playoffs again next season. I'll go ahead and write that off now. I'll go as far as saying they'll probably be a top 5 seed next season.
Let's go.
So,
Let's go.
Allow for them to do the things they need to do for them to put themselves in that position, and then everything else is going to handle itself from there. But be patient with them.
Can't say it better myself. He's Stephen Garner at StateUS.3. As always, check the writings on. Stephen is going to have a lot for you in the offseason, the WNBA offseason, because he'll be writing for PHNX Suns. He's going to be doing his thing right there. And I'm Chris Pennant at Quandary Kitten. That's KWANDARY Kitten. And you can always follow the show at CHGO_Sky and follow CHGO Sports. That's CHGO_Sports. For all of us, from us to you, this has been the CHGO Sky Show. Until next time, be good, keep your head above the clouds.